I pulled my 6-year-old daughter out of a Pentecostal private school without consulting my husband. My husband, 33/M, and I, 28/F, have a daughter, 6/F. We have been married for 6 years, and we dated for about a year before we got married. When my husband and I first started dating, I learned that he grew up in a very religious Pentecostal family. He is not fanatically religious, and he always shared stories about strange things he had seen at tent revivals, people claiming they were healing others from demons, speaking in tongues, etc. He has said he is not nearly as religious as his family, which I found reassuring because I grew up in a pretty relaxed family when it came to religion. He even told me how refreshing I was to him because of how secular and open-minded I am. Anytime I have spent time with his family, he always told me not to take anything they said seriously. They really wanted me to convert and join their Pentecostal church, which I did not want to do, and it was a point of contention. When we got married, it was an overly religious event, but it was to appease his mother-in-law so they did not make a huge scene. Appeasing his parents was mostly only in small doses here and there, though, so I tolerated it because I love him. His parents became insufferable and tried to control a lot of decisions when my daughter was born. His mother gave him a ton of grief about how concerned they were about my daughter being raised by me. They wanted to homeschool her when it was time for her to start going to school. I shut that down very quickly. I have talked to him many times about how he needs to stand up to his parents and back me up more. He came up with a compromise where we could send her to a Pentecostal private school. I was skeptical but open-minded, and I wanted to meet with the teachers and faculty at the school, and they seemed all right. I had friends who went to religious schools. So, to keep peace within the family, we enrolled her. I knew I wanted to make sure her home life would be an environment for open-minded thinking. I expressed this to him, and he told me he would be open to enrolling her in another school if it did not work out. She has been going to this school for 2 years now. Anytime I talk to him about my concerns, he deflects. I have had her talk to me about the concept of hell and ask me if I think her grandfather, my dad, is there. I recently witnessed her waving her arms slowly in the air, her head bowed to the floor, moving to music when watching TV sometimes. I'm terrified of the indoctrination at such a young age. I have had enough. I took her out of the school without even telling my husband because he has absolutely no sense of urgency and shuts down the topic immediately. He was furious with me and screamed at me, and he tried to tell me how much of a nightmare public schools can be, and that one of the teachers at the private school is friends with his mother, and she is going to be telling her everything, etc., etc., etc. This is such a cluster of problems, and I feel sick about subjecting my daughter to all of this conflict and tension. My husband left and said he needed time to process what I did. He is spending Easter with his parents, and I am alone with my daughter. I am not lost when it comes to knowing that I want to protect my daughter at all costs. What I need advice on is that I feel totally lost on how to move forward with my relationship. This has been one of the only times I stood my ground, and everything feels like it is crumbling. How should I go about this situation with my husband? Update 1. Thank you for all the responses on the original post. A lot of the feedback was something I really needed to hear, and it helped me come to realizations about this situation. I am very frustrated with myself for letting everything get out of hand like this. My daughter means everything to me, and I am angry that I did not stop all of this sooner or recognize the warning signs as clearly as I should have. I know it seems obvious, and I should have known better, but it is hard to explain why it was so difficult. I was basically a frog in a pot of water that was very, very slowly starting to boil. There was a strange fog of war from everything going on that caused me to delude myself into thinking compromise was possible. My husband's ambivalence toward what I find alarming really slowly evolved over time. It was not like a light switch. I know hindsight is 20/20, but I cannot help but feel anger toward myself. I basically took her out of the school Thursday morning of last week. The night before, we got into an argument when I brought up my discomfort about the school. I know a lot of people thought my breaking point was seeing my daughter praying and swaying, but it was really a culmination of a lot of things, between the praying, the fire and brimstone mentality of the topics about hell, the fear I sensed coming from her, the awkwardness and coldness I would get from faculty at that school whenever I picked her up, and the fact that she would at times spew gibberish or recite Bible passages that she does not even comprehend or understand what any of it actually means, etc., etc. My frustrations boiled over, and my husband refused to talk about it, as he has done several times before over the last 2 years, so the following morning I took her out of the school. After he screamed at me and argued with me about how public schools are dangerous, he stormed off, and I have not heard from him since that argument. He has been completely MIA. I have met with a few schools, and I am already trying to find solutions on that end. I am not too worried about being able to find a less harmful environment for her. I think there are a lot of good options for her on that front. My main worry now is the unpredictable nature and silence from my husband. My brother has some connections to a few divorce lawyers, so I talked to some in preparation for the worst. Yesterday evening, a man in his late 70s or early 80s stopped by our house. I did not answer the door because I did not recognize him. He then suspiciously walked around the property, looking around the house, and then left. I called the police, and they went around and surveyed the area, but the man had already left before they arrived. Earlier this afternoon, I went to get the mail, and I saw this man again, and he approached me. He walked up to me as if he knew me and said he wanted to check on the welfare of the child that lives in this house. I asked him who he was, and he refused to answer me. He then started to mention the name of the psychiatrist I see and said that a little girl being looked after by a young woman with mental illness is a cause for great alarm, or something along those lines. I have been seeing a psychiatrist for an anxiety disorder. It is nothing out of hand, and I have gotten a firm grasp on keeping it at bay with medication, and I have been okay. Only my husband knows about this, and I assume his parents know because he knows, and whoever this man is knows them. That is my only assumption. I told this man to leave, and I threatened to call the police. He left after saying something about how the girl is going to be protected. I'm going to meet with a lawyer tomorrow and figure out a plan. I'm going to file for a divorce because this has gotten to a point where I feel unsafe. I worry that me being treated for an anxiety disorder will be used against me. I have no idea what they are plotting against me, but it feels like they are playing mind games with me. I left the house with my daughter. We are safe, and I have a much clearer idea and solution moving forward. I'm not going to try to salvage the relationship with my husband, and my main focus is to make sure my daughter is in a stable and safe environment. Update 2. I am currently locked in a battle with my soon-to-be ex-husband over our differences on how we both want our daughter to be raised. When my husband and I first started dating, I learned that he grew up in a very religious Pentecostal family. He shared stories about strange things he had seen at tent revivals, people claiming they were healing others from demons, speaking in tongues, etc. He emphasized that he was not nearly as religious as his family. It seems like he has been downplaying his faith for years and misleading me. In our relationship, my husband often placated his Pentecostal family's desires, such as their push for me to convert and our wedding being a highly religious event. After our daughter's birth, his parents' controlling nature escalated, expressing a desire to homeschool her and questioning my capabilities as a mother. I noticed my husband was torn between our life and his parents' demands, while still insisting he was not religious and that it was all to maintain the peace. After many discussions, we compromised by enrolling our daughter in a Pentecostal private school. I wanted to make sure I could foster open-minded thinking at home, and I received my husband's assurance that he would prioritize our relationship and our daughter's best interests over appeasing his parents. He also agreed that we could change schools if needed. She was enrolled in this school for the last 2 years, and over that time, everything has gotten worse. Anytime I talk to him about my concerns, he deflects. During that time, she talked to me about the concept of hell and asked me if I thought her grandfather, my dad, who died about a year ago from esophageal cancer, was there. I witnessed her waving her arms slowly in the air, her head bowed to the floor, moving and swaying to music when watching TV sometimes. About a month ago, before Easter break, I had enough. I took her out of the school without even telling my husband because he has absolutely no sense of urgency and immediately shuts down the topic. When he got home, he was furious and screamed at me. He tried to tell me how much of a nightmare public schools can be and that one of the teachers at the private school, who was friends with his mother, would be telling her everything, etc. He stormed out to spend Easter weekend with his parents, leaving us in silence for nearly 2 weeks. In his absence, an elderly man I did not know visited our home twice, claiming concern for my daughter's safety and inappropriately referencing my anxiety disorder and my psychiatrist's name, information known only to my husband and presumably his parents. I called the police. I also noticed substantial withdrawals from our joint bank account. I promptly transferred the remaining money into a private savings account and left our home with our daughter for the safety of my brother's house, several hours away. I started working with a divorce attorney, exploring the process of filing for divorce and seeking a custody order. After nearly 2 weeks of no contact, my husband called, accusing me of taking his daughter away. His mother, audibly yelling in the background, attacked my anxiety disorder, referring to me as Miss Clonopin, and said she did not want me to drag her granddaughter to hell with you, while also claiming grandparent rights, etc. I told him I thought it was best that we communicate through our lawyers going forward, and I hung up. This ordeal has been an absolute nightmare. After filing a petition, any negotiations for a settlement have quickly reached an impasse, to the point where I do not see how we would not eventually go to court. My brother has been helping me with legal costs, and he suspects things are being drawn out intentionally to try to drain me financially, since my husband makes significantly more money than I do. The negotiations keep reaching impasses because of their aggressive claims against me. They allege that I am making up stories about the intimidation from the older man, even though I am telling the truth. They are also arguing that by pulling our daughter out of the Pentecostal school and refusing to allow her to interact with her grandparents, I removed her from a stable environment and thrust her into an unfamiliar one. They accuse me of having a secular bias and insist that my actions have been damaging to our daughter's mental and emotional well-being. They claim I deprived her of her faith community and caused unnecessary confusion and anxiety by uprooting everything she had known and taking her hours away from her main family and friends at school. They also claim that I was actively ignoring my husband's attempts to make contact, despite him not actually making any attempts outside of that one phone call. My lawyer says they are trying to exploit the court's usual preference for maintaining stability in a child's life and that they want me to feel a sense of hopelessness, so that I will give in and compromise. My brother thinks it would be best to go to court because he believes that a lot of what they are claiming will be exposed. I cannot wait for this nightmare to be over. I just want my daughter to be safe from all of this. Final update: there is more context to all of this in my previous posts on various subreddits, but to briefly summarize everything that has happened, I have been locked in a feud with my soon-to-be ex-husband over how to raise our 6-year-old daughter. When we first started dating, he downplayed his deep Pentecostal roots. However, after our daughter was born, his parents' religious influence grew, and he became increasingly submissive to their wishes, much to my dismay. I reluctantly compromised and agreed to enroll her in a Pentecostal school, but when I saw the impact it was having on her, I removed her, which caused a massive rift. After some intimidation attempts from people connected to the Pentecostal community and a few financial scares, I left home with my daughter. I am pursuing a divorce, but negotiations have been extremely bitter. They claim I am ruining our daughter's life by removing her from a familiar faith and her friends. We are bringing in a third-party mediator because negotiations are not progressing, though I doubt it will make a difference. What I want and what my husband and his parents want are vastly different. Their terms are unreasonable. He wants full custody of our daughter and says that I can see her once a week. Originally, it was once a month, and then it was increased to once a week as their way of throwing me a bone. They persistently attack my mental health, as they do not believe in psychiatry at all. The numerous times I have heard phrases like secular bias or mentally ill thrown at me during these negotiations make me feel sick. He and his family seem to gaslight me into thinking that I knew what I was getting myself into when marrying into the family. The hostility from my husband's mother is frightening. She has even said that she does not feel like God looks after the courts anymore, using that as a reason she does not want this to go to trial, especially since I have been granted temporary custody. She is furious about that. My husband has since been granted supervised visitation after they fought for it. At least it is supervised, because if they attempt anything extreme, it will likely be noted by the supervisor. My daughter always seems very quiet after visits, which makes me anxious. The evaluator and supervisor seem thorough whenever they visit me, although the scrutiny can sometimes feel uncomfortable. They have even visited my brother's house to observe our interactions. My lawyer keeps telling me that all of this works in my favor. Whenever I am observed with my daughter, everything goes well. Because of that, I do have confidence that I will not lose custody in the long run, despite their relentless attempts to argue against me. I am starting to call their bluffs regarding my mental health and the claims of secular bias. My brother keeps telling me that much of what they are saying will not hurt me legally. Even so, it is still very difficult. It is exhausting to constantly feel like people are trying to portray me as a negative influence on my daughter or as someone who is harming her. This entire process is extremely anxiety-inducing. What makes it worse is that when this inevitably goes to trial, it may be dragged out because the courts are often backlogged. My brother, who has been helping me financially throughout all of this, continues to be my strongest support. He has used his connections to help me through this process, and his support has made a huge difference. This has disrupted my husband's plan to drag things out and financially exhaust me, because they did not anticipate that I would have such a strong support system. Recently, my husband made several attempts to meet with me alone. I was hesitant, but he kept emphasizing that his parents would not be involved. I thought maybe it could be an opportunity to talk things through. It was not. He still could not understand that my concerns are not about faith itself, but about the environment in which it is being forced on our daughter. I told him that this version of him, the one who is suddenly deeply religious, was hidden from me for years, and now I am expected to accept it as if it was always part of who he was. It makes me feel manipulated. As we were leaving, I saw his mother waiting in his car. She approached me and confronted me with the usual threats about hell and accusations that I am waging spiritual warfare against their family. I have been documenting everything and reporting it to my lawyer, especially the verbal harassment. I truly cannot wait for this to be over. Mediation is next, but I do not expect it to resolve anything. They seem nervous about going to trial, which gives me some confidence. Still, this has been an incredibly exhausting and painful experience to go through.